So hi, I'm Michael Sikorsky, and as Joseph pointed out, I'm the Minister of Hair. I'm going to talk to you guys about the future in your hand. But I love technology, and I love it so much, I'm going to start with actually an invention of the space. So I'm going to talk about the space between words. So when we invented, before the space, this slide's actually even a little silly. I actually debated myself putting this one up, because if you think about the invention of the space, it's so natural that it's almost silly to look backwards. This is actually 2750 BCE, and it's basically the first time you see literature on a stone tablet. It's actually a story of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Actually, they have a really neat narrative for time passing the loaf of bread. But when you look at it, you go, I don't even know where I would start, right? And if you go forward, you can actually imagine now there's monks. Now, here's monks with Latin scripture, and they're actually murmuring and chanting, right? Everything with the monks, oops, he's the wrong way, is out loud. Right? Because there's no invention of the space. They actually do not know how to read silently because it's too hard to figure out where the breaks are. And so, in fact, if you looked inside a monastery, what actually would have to happen is that actually make this special room where they were allowed to talk because they had a vow of silence. It's kind of the opposite of a library today. And so now we've invented the space. So how did the space get invented? Well, it took about 3,000 years, and it was actually Irish monks, and it's because they didn't know Latin very well. That's actually the whole issue. The issue is they're sitting there going, this is really hard to learn, I can't figure it out. If I just give myself some spaces, I'll actually be able to figure this out, right? And, you know, half of all inventions are actually done that way. And this part for me is very wild, because I love technology, and it took 800 years for the world to say, okay, this is now how we do it. Right? So everyone started seeing that, and they didn't like it. People don't like stuff when it changes. They go, this doesn't make any sense. We didn't want spaces. There's a really long history of no spaces. And so it actually took 800 years. That's actually a Arthurian legend. You can even see not everything's quite done with spaces yet. That's a little bit before the 800 years, but that's a long time. Okay? But why do I love this idea of the space? It's democratized reading, but like what's really done is given scale of knowledge. You can read silently. Reading's easier, right? Reading was really hard before. There was a whole program of figuring stuff out to get this deep scale. Now we're going to talk about the printing press. Just so you know, I'm not going to talk about the cotton gin. So that takes 250 years. So you can see again, there's like 800 years, 250 years for the next invention. But what it's giving us here is speed. So think about reading silently. It's giving us scale. All of a sudden, it's so beautiful. We've got the printing press speed. We can actually get this stuff out. And so now, only 200 years, now we've got the steam engine. The steam engine, again, we're back to scale. If you think about it, you should take, say, months to get somewhere, and you could take days or weeks. It's quite beautiful. It's why I can have bananas in the winter. And if you look at this, you can see the acceleration of innovation. Things keep going faster and faster to become commercially scaled out. Let's talk about the ENIAC. Back to speed. This is actually the world's first general-purpose computer, 1,000 times faster than anything before it. And when I think about this is something that we think about a lot, is innovation's pendulum. We basically keep swinging through all these eras for things that give us scale, then they give us speed, then they give us scale, then they give us speed. And I find this almost amazing. It's only 55 years from when you have like full rooms of computers to the internet. And if you think about scale, what's ever given us more scale? If you go back to the steam engine, you think it's really neat, months turn into days. And now, what does it mean? People are publishing so fast, it's real time, right? It's the epitome of scale. And this is something that I believe so much. So it's a quotation from Clay Christensen. The next big thing always starts out being dismissed as a toy. In fact, actually, when I hear people start wanting to make fun of a lot of stuff, I think, hey, that's probably where I should go. So if you rewind back and you think about even the invention of the internet, you could talk to people and you talk to a business leader and they'd be like, I don't understand why I'd have email. I don't get why I'd have a website. This doesn't make any sense. Just like Plato hated the written word. Plato actually believed that how could you trust the written word? You got to listen to someone that did it, right? And then you actually have people still today even making fun of stuff like Twitter. This is even crazy fast, only 18 years from the internet to the iPhone. And what's happening is speed and scale are going so fast, it's hard to separate them. In fact, everyone's kind of coalescing a bit because you have LTE and then the iPhone 5S and it's all just working. And then this is something that I think, again, is a little bit mind-blowing. If you were born before 1970, you could actually feel how fast the internet scaled out if you're in the enterprise. So if you're born before 1970, that's your blue line. If you're kind of dismissive of the iPhone and the iPod Touch, that's the green line. It actually makes the adoption of the internet look slow, and that was a free piece of software that anyone could get. And the other side, you have what some people think is an expensive piece of hardware, and it's making everything look pokey. And then let's think about all these devices that are connected out there in the world. What I think is really wild is Apple had their quarterly earnings yesterday, best quarter ever. And to date, there's now over 700 million just iPhones and iPads. Like, look how many decades it took to get 1 billion users just online. Right? That's from 2007 only to get to 700 million. And this is one of those things, like, I love the iPhone and I love making stuff for it. And when Apple announced the iPhone 5S, they're actually talking about 64-bit. In fact, it's almost like an anti-Apple moment, because what does that mean? No one knows what that means. In fact, friends would phone me up and be like, do I need that? Do I need 64-bit? Can I have 65-bit? Right? And it really doesn't. The reason, that's actually for us. That's actually for the technology people. Because what that means is that now that thing that's in our pockets is actually as good as our laptops. It's actually converging. So you don't need anything else. And then I always like to look at the App Store, because people want to make fun of the App Store, especially business people, like what's going on in the App Store doesn't make any sense. But if you just pretended that the App Store was its own company, just pull it out. Well, actually, it's bigger than Devon Energy, right? It's actually a top 275 Fortune 500 company. And it's got more profit than Verizon. It's actually a top 100 Fortune 500 company. Just the App Store, just a thing that you almost don't make sense of what your kids are doing on. I don't get it. And as someone who loves technology, it's actually a little lame. Like, I do love technology, it's a little lame. And because if you look at what's happening is that we have these little monks churning and chattering and beeping and booping at us all the time, and they're kind of distracting us, right? And it's kind of like it's out loud. And so there, I got to just move on after that. I had one more thing. I'll save it. So, but why is this amazing, anyways? The reason I think it's amazing is, guess what happens? That pendulum, that innovation pendulum, is going to swing back and fix it. Right? It always comes back and fixes it. Right? And so this is Pope Benedict and Pope Francis, and look at the difference in 8 years. There's actually one cell phone in the 2005 when taking a picture. It's like 1,000 points of light. And if you look at this time period now, you can actually be alive now for these innovations. You can actually see multiple eras, multiple epochs. For example, I've now seen 2. Right? I think my kids are going to see more than 8, and I think that's amazing. This is a device. I'm actually wearing one tonight. If I could ever got the technology working here, I'd actually be able to move the slides without using this clicker. It's actually a gestural controller. So rather than having this clicker they can't figure out, I could just move the slides forward, kind of like a Tony Stark. And I think anyone that wants to see later on, because I look totally like him, I know, it's beautiful. Anyone that wants to see it, I'll have it out in the reception. But again, this whole era of what's happening, this actually makes it very silent. It's not in your face. And what I think is really amazing, this comes out of Google X. And this is actually a contact lens for a diabetic. You put it in your eye, and it actually can tell you how to basically manage your insulin. You don't have to know. No one has to know about it. It's like the space between words again. And for me, the future is already here. It's just not even distributed yet. Thank you.